And once again, thank you for joining us for our continued coverage of TIA 2013. I'm here with Susan Schramm. She's the head of solutions for global portfolio marketing at NSN and also vice chair of our TIA board. Joining her is Cheryl Kingstone, director at Yankee Group with a focus on customer experience management. And thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Did I get your intros correct?
Yes,
Good.
That's who we are all week.
All right.
Absolutely.
Great. Susan, of course, we're talking about customer experience management, Cheryl as well. You've been leading the charge, per se, here at TIA 2013 to that respect. Susan, I'll start with you. What did you expect to get out of this dialogue from the industry?
I think we put this on the agenda for this event because we wanted to understand the progress being made. The industry's been talking about customer experience, improving the customer experience for many years, but the tool sets are now becoming much more real, and we were hoping to have clarity about what people were really doing and where they were struggling and what are the next steps to really sort of the get or done part of customer experience.
Cheryl, did you feel like you got it done over the last few days?
Yes, well, anything that really moves the bar forward is getting it done in this industry. I've been following the research and doing a lot within Yankee Group for 13 years. And the one thing about customer experience management, especially in a telco world, is we're always getting a black eye about saying, oh, we're the worst in the industry, oh, we're not trying, oh, they don't care about the customer. And the thing is that they really do care about the customer. They're spending millions and billions of dollars to improve their processes, to make sure that the user experience meets, exceeds expectations. But the question is, it's easier said than done. So I'm always just trying to move the bar forward.
Cheryl, I want to ask you, what do you think was the biggest takeaway as far as all the dialogue is under the umbrella of customer experience management here at the conference?
The biggest takeaway for me has been finally that the discussion isn't just about the network. So always when you're talking in a mobile environment or a telecom environment, it's always like, our network is the best one, or this is what we're doing to invest in radio access networks, and this is what we're doing to improve our capacity, which is a great discussion because it is one of the most important elements of the overall customer experience. The other thing is it's always been about price. What can we do to lower the cost? But this time, I didn't have to do that. We started out with a broad discussion about the user is at the center of the customer experience and that it's around 4 dimensions. It's around the company and the brand, it's around the products and the services, it's around the channel, which is customer service and support, and all the other channels that are out there of interaction, which is complex today, and service and delivery and operations. And the good news is right up from the start, we set that framework, and then it was continued over the next 3 days. We didn't just forget it and go straight back to the network.
Of course, Susan, Cheryl just mentioned a couple of the concerns and one of the challenges.
Yeah, well, let me just hit on this. I
Sure.
thought one other thing that was interesting about the vision part was that no matter where people were coming from, there were some common goals that seemed to transcend whether people were from government, from enterprises, from small companies, from large. I mean, the idea of intuitive applications, the idea of a customer experience that was truly holistic, end to end, right? So people ended up with understanding that it wasn't just the network, and they recognized the whole aspect of delivering it with people. I think as an industry, especially, we have roots in technology, so we seem to use everything as a nail and we have a hammer. And I think that this holistic view of what it meant to have a good customer experience was very common, and people weren't debating what the end game looked like. They were, if there was a debate, it was where do they start? How do you get going? Right? So it was hard. I mean, back to your point about challenges.
Now, as far as delivering on the promise of customer experience management, have the common themes of those challenges to make that happen changed? Have they evolved? Or have they sort of stayed the same over the last 2-3 years?
That's my point. I think that in the old days, we were talking about, do we have the right data to create insights? We were talking about, do we have the right delivery model to have the right network performance? And I think we're at the point where the technology's actually pretty darn good, and we actually have a huge number of tool sets. Now, the very thing that makes customer experience cool, which is this holistic view you were just talking about, is the very thing that's the hardest, which is the complexity of execution. So you end up with service providers and enterprises in all different stages of execution, and they start with like how do I get going on this? Or then they go to the next stage, which is, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed with I've gotten started and now it's too much. So what we're finding is whether the complexity is big data. I mean, data itself, which is a wonderful, awful, right? It's wonderful to have it, but then how do you make sure you correlate it? A lot of discussion in several of the panels about whether that was the big data session or whether that was the session about the smartphone information versus the network. How do you take information you have about your customer and see it in such a way that you can use it and take action? In some cases, the aha isn't there. You have now data that you don't know really how to identify what to do with it.
Yeah, big data is a very difficult topic for especially when you're talking about mobile operators and telcos because they have so much of it. And so now that they recognize that there is valuable data in the network, there's valuable data in the marketing departments, there's valuable data in customer care, most of it isn't the fact that they don't have the data. Most of it is how do they bring it all together? How do they make it actionable? And then how do they share it? There's a lot of scariness in sharing data, primarily because how do they know that what they're sharing is the most accurate or the most up to date?
But didn't you find it interesting? It wasn't just the fear. I mean, I think we're hearing Washington and all this discussion about sharing data in terms of privacy.
It wasn't about
that. What was it about?
It was about the accuracy of the data. It was about their fiefdom saying, this is mine, I know it works. What happens if it doesn't tell the same story to my marketing partner? And then we start arguing over it. And what came right out about the vision, we had a vision survey and we asked them, what is it about the barrier to customer experience? And we had up there technology, we had up there big data, we had everything. And one of the things that external pressures, by the way, external competitive pressures, non-existent, right? What they were most concerned about was internal organizational communications. And it's so funny because you would think that we've come a long way, but we've always had that problem.
Every company has that. That's not just unique to telcos.
No.
I mean, that's common. You even in the small business session we just had this morning, they said we even have that problem with how do you get everybody aligned to go after a common goal. So
it sounds like some of the outcomes from these sessions were a surprise to you. Were there any other surprises? Cheryl, I'll start with you.
I guess the surprises that come about is when you're still within each group, everyone had their perspective and they stayed on it. So whether it be service delivery and they did that, or whether it be in a marketing discussion or a smartphone discussion, and they still kept it within their own little domain, right? But when we're talking about the user experience and when we're talking about improving it across all 4 dimensions, the one big takeaway is it isn't just about the smartphone. It isn't just about the network, and it isn't just about the mobile apps. It's about how the mobile apps interact on the network and then interact on the device, and how the user is interacting all 3. And that is a very complex problem to solve. And the thing is not one part of the ecosystem can control that user experience. It's about collaborating together, not only internally, but across the entire ecosystem. And that's something that is just not going to be solved in the near future.
Yeah, I think I saw, I didn't expect the number of times we'd see this word alignment to be so important. And it's funny because I started the session on the first day in the Quality Matters Quest Forum discussion about how do you align all the ecosystem to deliver quality with metrics. And then you get into the issue of the vision, where we talked about the idea that government, that the enterprises have to really also be clear on what they want. So you're serving the customer and the customer's customer. You have to think through to the end. And then even in the last 2, we had a discussion of the supply chain. How does the supply chain impact customer experience? So it's not just inside your walls. You have to be communicating with all aspects of your supply chain to help everybody line up. And then in that discussion today about the small business, where they see their value add as very much agility, being able to be very customer-centric and adept. But they said, what is that? I mean, here's a company with 30 people in his company, and for every one of his customers, he has 100 contacts in every customer that he has to keep track of to know what they're thinking. So just alignment, I think, was, it's so obvious, communication alignment, but here we are in the communications industry, and people communications become some of the biggest barriers in complexity.
Susan, it's always good to debate and discuss these various topics here at the conference, but it's even better and more valuable to have a call to action when you're done with those sessions. Any call to action coming out of customer experience management?
Yeah, I saw, we're going to be doing an action report where we're actually intending to write, and TIA as a board is intending to make sure that we do carry forward the dialogue, whether it was about the cloud or M2M or any other aspect of the tracks that were here. Because I think at the end of the day, we can have very nice little insights, but if we don't really line up and change, we're missing that. I did find that there is a policy discussion to be had, and it showed up across the board. It showed up in a discussion of big data and a discussion of WebRTC, standards, right? The issue was that we have both a market set of questions to deal with and policy on privacy, me protecting my information, and intuitive applications. If you take the full benefit, a positive experience, I want the ability to have the network perform for me. So I have to be willing to give information. So the market can make some calls to action, which is start to get more clear about what it is you're giving up. And one comment that was made was, hey, listen guys, when you sign that agree button, every time you get excited about a new app, you go, sure, agree, and you don't read anything, you've just given away a lot of information. Might we want to move to a model where it's more like HIPAA, where when you agree, you're giving it for a set of narrower constraints. So you're agreeing for this information for this moment, and then sort of like that opt-in, opt-out, the terms, they have to comply to some set of narrower use of that data. So that's a market-based approach that would be a call to action for our market. From a policy point of view, the subject of security really came up, and there was a lot of crossover between the cybersecurity discussions, the general speaking about what was going on at NSA, and then what we were doing in the meetings. And then again, that came up with technology doesn't care. Technology is, 70% of the traffic is going to be video. We all keep talking about. It's going to create this huge burgeoning demand on the networks. We got ways to make it better, but we're embedding voice inside video. Okay, and now we're going to be able to use it to any device. If that device is an iPad, there's no big deal. It's a tablet. But if that device happens to be a phone, which now will enable a wonderful set of health industry applications that can help do monitoring of patients in their home, all sorts of great stuff, suddenly that's regulated. And suddenly a whole bunch of rules kick in gear. And so we're going to have to deal with the fact that the technology jumped ahead very agnostically, and the policy, like we continue to discuss, is going to actually constrain innovation. And so I think as an industry, helping educate the lawmakers as to the consequences on stifling innovation because of some of their unintended consequences, I think will be a large part of our agenda as we go into 2014.
That can be challenging, I know. Any other market issues, standards, policy?
I would say, well, not necessarily, because Susan covered the policy side of it. When you're talking about customer experience management, and the call to action there is, if you're not really looking at it from the user experience, really start looking at it. But if you're not looking at it across all the dimensions, so understanding the impact of your pricing models and understanding what the users want today, understanding how that relates to new products and services and how that's brought to market, and then how that relates to balancing out the act around delivering customer care. And everything that's really changed, the user's empowered today for that. So they want more flexible pricing models. So if I'm looking at across all the dimensions, they want more flexible pricing models. What are we doing in our systems, in our networks, in our policies to make that happen? Let's stop this whole discussion around unlimited and thresholding. What do the users want, and how can we educate them? When it comes to products and services, everything is much more immersive now. Everything is much more personalized, contextual. So what is it that we're doing from the user's perspective to create products and services that meet those needs? Again, that's meeting the needs of the customer from their point of view. When it comes to channel, right, a lot has changed from customer service and support. And when we look at the retail stores today, when we look at what we're doing on the web, when we're looking at mobile applications, they aren't necessarily built from the eyes of the customer. Right now you walk into a store, sometimes you get service, sometimes you're constantly sold. We've got to take a look at other best practices out there from Apple that have created the Genius Store, or other ways that we can educate the users across all the different points of that experience so that they're getting more from that device that they're interacting with, along with the delivery and operations. And I'll raise one other point is, mainstream users today don't really use the device as we do here, right? So they're picking up their phone, they're making a phone call, they might send some text, and they're doing a few mobile applications. If you're an average user today, the net promoter score of that user is lower. It's only around 28%. But when you get to your higher users that really use your smartphone users, but your heavy smartphone users that use your mobile applications, that use your service, their net promoter scores are significantly higher, but they're also higher to churn. So we've got to understand that it's about the total experience, from what it means from the brand on pricing, the products that they're using, the channels that they interact, and the delivery mechanisms that we're controlling that experience, all have to play together to meet that user experience.
And you know what, I think one of the things you often inserted to the discussion this week, Cheryl, was a call to action to each of our companies, no matter where you are in the whole value chain, was you said, do you have a senior executive who is in charge of the customer experience?
I forgot to even mention that.
Right. And it's interesting because we, for instance, are making sure that we have end-to-end metrics that have ensured that the entire senior management is looking at a quality standard from the eyes of the customer. And you're actually suggesting even another role.
We need an executive level in charge of the customer experience that can holistically go across all the different departments, that reports into the CEO. Now the CEOs are trying to do this today, the CIOs are trying to do it today, but there's got to be someone that is in charge of that overall customer experience that can make those balanced decisions, because you can't just throw money at it. I mean, we are in it for profitability.
It's redirecting resources. It's allowing people to give visibility to a problem that would be stuck too far. And it is sort of a crossover between quality and customer experience and marketing, in the customer.
The fiefdom and the arguments across departments.
It'll be an interesting, I thought that was a organizational call to action that I thought we hadn't really seen, but everybody sort of said, yeah, you're right, Cheryl.
It's surprising to me that position doesn't exist now.
And it's called different things, but
Okay.
often what they end up doing is there's a bent towards one aspect. They call it service delivery sometimes.
It's bent towards service
can be,
delivery.
but it's bent towards customer service organizations. And sometimes it's in the marketing organization or sales. But what she's, so if you look at that whole model we've been using while we're here, if the customer's in the middle, their perception of value that they're receiving from you will definitely touch all aspects of your organization. And you've got to have some common KPIs that everybody's accountable to, and someone that forces you to say, are you dealing with this? So I thought it was sort of humbling, actually. We all have
not just lip service. Everyone says, well, the customer is the most important. Putting action behind it is what's really important.
Susan, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, especially, first of all, we appreciate your involvement in TIA 2013. You were a big presence here. We all at TIA appreciate that. Cheryl Kingstone of Yankee Group, we're all happy to meet you, first of all. And you were a big voice at the conference as well, from what I hear.
Thank you.
So, and I mean that in a positive way.
I was going to say, well, I am a little outspoken sometimes, so.
It was a good customer experience for us, anyway.
A great close.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for watching our continued coverage of TIA 2013. Again, right here at the Gaylord National in Washington, D.C. To access any content from TIA 2013, go to TIA2013.org. And to follow us on Twitter, please go to TIA_now. So long.